Pleasure.
Our final speaker is Ralph Carmichael. Ralph is CEO and General Counsel of Carbon Market Exchange Limited. He has over 30 years of financial and management experience. He's applying that knowledge to provide businesses with world-class carbon offsets generated from conservation initiatives to protect endangered species and promote biodiversity. Ralph, I'll let you take it from here.
Good morning, or getting to be good afternoon. One correction on the CFO, not the CEO. The CEO may take offense at that one. So I got into this market, and I'm probably going to be a little bit more controversial than the last speaker because I'm going to disagree a little bit with some of the topics that he brought up. I started in this business about a year ago. Prior to that, I was, and I still have other businesses, and I've been in financial services, and I manage money as well. Roughly about $500 million in hedge fund style trading. In terms of returns, I'm in the top 1% of all managers in the world and have been since 1985. My background is fairly straightforward. I was a partner at Bear Stearns. I was a lawyer with Cadwalader. And now I'm working in the carbon markets. Carbon Market Exchange was founded about a year ago. Today, we are the largest holder of contracts related to nature-based solutions in the world. We have roughly 1.8 billion tons under contract of offset credits at the moment, making us about 40 to 50% of the worldwide market. That will continue for 30 years because those contracts are for 30 years. So we're going to be in this market, and we are right now a fairly large originator of credits, and we are also providing them to large corporations as well as individuals. And we are looking for alternative distribution methods as we speak. The market has developed over the last year, but let's put some numbers around it. According to Vera, in the history of this market, 877 million tons of carbon have traded. Now, I'm talking about the voluntary market. Now, let me distinguish a couple of different things. Is it really voluntary? Okay, that's a question we all have to ask. Okay, is this a voluntary market? If the SEC is going to require you to report, if governments are starting to pressure. Now, in the US, we're doing it a little different than the rest of the world. We're doing it a little different. We can't get stuff through our legislature. We can't get stuff through our government. So we're going to use the administrative state to establish rules. So in the US, it's the banking regulators and the SEC that are actually providing the pressure on companies to start to think about their carbon footprint. It is a much different approach. Now, I personally think that the markets can solve these problems a lot better than governments. So when you start talking about the mandatory markets and how successful, let's face it, you write a regulation. I'm a very good lawyer. You write a regulation, give me 20 to 30 minutes, I'll tell you how to get around it. There are lawyers in New York that spend their entire career figuring out how to structure around regulation. As a result, write the regulation. Worse, if it's something they don't like, they'll move their company. So you're not going to change without financial pressures or other types of pressures. You're not going to change the way businesses are currently operated. The SEC, by making carbon something that should be reported, you're going to do a couple of things. If you report it as a liability, and you say, okay, you're going to have to put it on your books as a liability, you're going to put companies into a position where they have three choices. The first choice is to change their operations. That's impossible. Okay, given the regulatory structure that exists in the world, especially, let's use the auto industry as an example. General Motors runs a fairly highly leveraged company. However, it is regulated by the Department of Transportation. It is virtually impossible for GM to change its operations, because if they do, it costs billions of dollars of money they don't have. It's not going to happen. So changing operations is not a viable option. You say you're going to put the liability on their books and create a liability. Again, then they have the choice. And the choice is file bankruptcy, and environmental liability is difficult to remove in bankruptcy. So you have, that's not a choice that's very attractive either, or somehow use an offset mechanism in order to offset the carbon footprints. Okay, so those are basically what they're putting companies in a position to make one of those three decisions. If you continue to put liabilities on the books of the company, you will force a lot of bankruptcies. So I don't know if that's something that people would like to see, that put a lot of people out of work. You're going to change the way a lot of things are happening. So this is not necessarily as voluntary as people say. The mandatory markets that are created around the world, there are enough holes in those regulations that you can drive a truck through them. So they're not really forcing people to change. And again, you're putting them in the same position, or you put them in the position, let's move our headquarters. So these markets are developing. What we're doing is primarily nature-based solutions. And I never thought that we would be in a position where we are actually fighting not only the regulatory structures, the governments in various areas, the markets, market acceptance, market development, where all those forces are in effect, but also the environmental community. The environmental community, and I'm right now in Michigan, and a couple of years ago, the environmental community took a victory lap because they said we eliminated fossil fuels from electric production in the state of Michigan. We're using a renewable source, biomass. Interesting. What's biomass? Well, when you come down to it, biomass is trees. 300 years ago, the human species stopped cutting trees down on this planet for heat for a reason. It's not an efficient way to do it. Biomass electricity has 12 times the carbon footprint as coal, 23 times the footprint of natural gas. And quite frankly, when you really think about it, what is coal? Coal is just old biomass. So the solution is actually worse than the problem. And so what happened in one of the stats that sticks in my head is in 2020, 8% of this planet's trees were cut down for biomass electricity. And that is deemed a sustainable energy source. Well, some of those trees are 500,000 years old that they are cutting down or clear cutting for electricity. It is not renewable. It is not sustainable, yet that is going on. So we started looking at the three, right now we have 3 large forests left on this planet: Africa, Central and South America, and Asia, roughly in Indonesia. So at the end of the day, you're looking at a situation where there are 3 large forests. I don't want to have this conversation next year and talk about the 3 medium forests. So what we started doing was locking up massive tracts of land around the world, where under the Vera standards, it will be RED plus CCB. But those are most of our projects. We're trying to put them in perpetuity. So what's happening is you have a system of creating credits. Ours are nature-based. Now, is that going to solve the problem? Probably not. Is it going to slow it? Yeah, it'll slow it a little bit. Oh, someone's telling me I'm at 10 minutes. So what do I have, 20? Okay.
That's right.
So what we have is a scenario where we can slow this, but we can't stop it at the moment. It is a train that's speeding. Now, we are also taking the proceeds that we're earning and we're reinvesting in other things, specifically hydrogen-based technologies, which may or may not be a long-term solution to the energy issue. Right now, at the rate that we use electricity, we have a problem. We are also working in various places where our projects are providing capital to local communities one of which that we just started just recently is in Central America, where we are using the money to move people from islands that are going underwater due to the rising oceans. And we're seeing other anomalies, one of which is, I never really thought about it, but one of our scientists said, as the ice caps are melting, it's redistributing the weight, and we're getting a tectonic shift at the moment. And that's to cause the volcano off of Tonga. So we're trying to put together various different areas of the world where we can protect the forest. We're also trying to protect biodiversity, which is also key to our survival. It cracks me up because people say we're going to save the planet. The planet will be fine. Venus is a beautiful planet. You just can't live on it. We're doing this not for us, but for our children and grandchildren, to provide a place where people can live. Today, we need to change the fundamental way the human species interacts with nature in a variety of different ways. Our solutions are providing mass protection of mass forests around the world, and then we are funding those through the sale of credits. Now, the market for credits is not large enough to, and I disagree with the statement that there's an unlimited amount of credit projects out there. No, that is a fixed and declining number. The amount of nature-based credits is there's a fixed amount of real estate on this planet. Actually, because of rising water, it's decreasing, not increasing. And we're developing various forests around the world. So the size of the forest and the ability to provide nature-based solutions is a declining number as well. Now, on the demand side, the market has not developed yet. Now, I was early in the mortgage-backed market. I was early in derivatives market. I have numerous patents in a variety of different things. I have about 10 or 12 patents on financial derivatives. This market resembles early stages of the mortgage-backed market. It is developing. I think it will develop over the next couple of years, but it's the demand side that's the issue at the moment. The regulations across the planet are different. Whether you can use an offset isn't necessarily something that is accepted. Large companies are pushing it, and they're pushing it for competitive reasons. They're not really pushing it because they're trying to save the world. They're pushing it because why? If I can make it more expensive for my operations and I can afford them, smaller companies can't. They'll be forced to sell or go out of business. It is the same as all when you increase regulation on businesses, you create larger companies and the smaller companies go away. So it's an interesting dynamic, and we're seeing it repeat itself again in this market. So it's the demand side. That's the reason why we're starting to use tokenization and blockchain, because it adds another dynamic to to be able to distribute offsets and finance these projects around the world.
Hey, Ralph, we have a question from Alex, who's one of the previous panelists, you might remember. Alex, do you want to pose your question to Ralph?
Yeah, I wanted, first of all, to congratulate Ralph on a fantastic presentation, echoing a lot of the points that I'm sometimes too shy to make myself. But my question is, to fix the demand side, besides regulation and, streamlining that across the world and having some sort of organization that does that, which is very difficult to centralize or decentralize depending on the need. It seems to me, and this may be completely my naivete, but it seems to me that marketing of carbon credits that are based on forest, on protection of forest land base is really the key, right? I mean, we have to make it clear to people that this is as cool as buying a Bitcoin, or make it clear to companies that this is as efficient, better than other types of carbon credits. And that type of marketing, I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I've seen some companies, some nonprofits do it. I haven't seen that type of marketing really, take the world by storm and say, hey, you can protect the Amazon. Whereas Luis, you can protect whatever.
I think you'll see that. We're going down to Miami for the Bitcoin and the NFT conferences next week, and we're launching a new token, and we're going to start that kind of marketing because this is the way I see the market. It's a little different. Okay, the bond market is an over-the-counter market. Funny enough, if you go back to the 1800s, the bond market was an exchange market. It was traded on the New York Stock Exchange. Original name for New York Stock Exchange was the New York Stock and Bond Exchange, and it went to over the counter. This is a market that's entirely over the counter, but it's also very illiquid. The token part of it is a way to go from institutional to retail. In other words, the going into the blockchain and the token market, what you're doing is making it available to the individual. And we have to educate the individual that this is something they can do. Everyone we speak to, and probably I'm not alone in that, we hear from individuals, we'd like to do something, but we don't know what to do. So we're trying to provide that solution. You will start seeing us doing that kind of marketing, saying, hey, this is pretty cool. The only one that I know that's out there in the blockchain is there's a new one called ECTA, which is coming out of Asia. And that's one where they're basically selling trees. And also they're doing another twist where if you bring in plastic, they give you tokens to try to get plastics out of the ocean. But there are a lot of different people attempting this, but it is the marketing and the PR and getting it out to the people that's going to make this a viable market. People have to understand. Personal opinion, I think that this market may actually develop, because right now, if you look at Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin? Bitcoin is no different than the tulips in the 1700s in Amsterdam. It's the greater fool theory. Okay, you're buying it. Why? Because there's a limited supply and there's someone who will buy it from you at a higher price. A carbon-backed token that's properly done may be a more stable currency. I mean, we used to back currencies with gold. Why gold? It's just a shiny rock, but people had perceived it to have value. If we can educate the public and get them to get that perception that carbon has value, you'll see individuals do it. Now, we also are putting up, after Miami, we're putting up a calculator that people can actually download to their phone that you can calculate your own footprint. So if you wanted to, you can offset. We're also right now talking to the major crypto exchanges to allow people to also buy offsets to offset their mining operations and or their purchases of crypto. So it is an education point of view, and we have to get out there and educate the public. And we're probably going to end up spending the better part of $500 million on those programs over the next 12 to 18 months in terms of that, in terms of education, advertising, blogs, all those types of things, because this story needs to get out there because people need to understand what's going on.
Well, Ralph, I think that's a great point to end on, and it's a great point to end this this whole set of speakers on, that there is action for us all to take still. But I thank you, Ralph. That was great, and I agree. I agree with Alex that that a lot of those points were well worth voicing, and a lot of us don't have the gumption to say them sometimes. So thank you.